All right.
Oh.
So awesome. Yeah, I see that now. So I will have to stop share in a moment though.
And we are live on YouTube, and now we are going to open the broadcast and start the webinar, and the recording will begin. And we're just going to
Excellent.
allow a few moments for our participants.
Excellent. Thank you, Patty.
My pleasure, Claudia.
Mhm. So let's see. Oh yeah, so we got a few minutes. It's up 6:27. So
Mm-hmm.
all right. If you are joining us, we have about 3 minutes before the start of the program. Um, so make yourselves comfortable and we'll get started in a few moments. Thank you for joining us.
So, Claudia, I'm going to share right now the Google Form link
Okay.
just in case folks will want that.
Okay. So you want me to stop sharing this now?
Oh,
Is that
no,
okay? No?
that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So it's 6:30. I think we can begin now. So I'm going to stop that and get out this. Oops. Pardon me. Okay. Whoops, sorry about that. All right. So welcome to Schaumburg Library. My name is Claudia Baranowski, and I am the ESL and Literacy Coordinator at the library. And joining me, welcome to tonight's program, which is Your Right to Fair Pay. This is the first of a three-part series, Know Your Rights in the Workplace, presented by Michaela Garrido of Legal Aid Society of Metropolitan Family Services. In tonight's training, you'll learn everything you need to know regarding your right to fair payment, including information about the minimum wage, tipped wage, and overtime. Again, my name is Claudia Baranowski, and I am the ESL Literacy Coordinator at the library. And joining me tonight off camera is my colleague, business librarian Patty Smolin. Um, our presenters will pause periodically to answer questions. Please enter your questions or comments using either the Q&A or the chat features at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll also be fielding any questions that come into us from the audience watching on YouTube. And now I would like to introduce tonight's presenter. As Legal Aid Society's outreach coordinator, Michaela Caton Garrido coordinates and implements outreach, training, and community engagement activities for Legal Aid Society. She has been with Legal Aid since LAS since 2014. She assists with cases involving a variety of issues, such as crime victim advocacy, immigration, and labor issues. She is fluent in English and Tagalog. And so thank you, Michaela, for being with us tonight, and I turn it over to you now.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. And first of all, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can share my presentation. So hopefully everyone's seeing my screen okay. All right, so again, thanks for having me here. My name is Mika Garrido, and I am going to talk about some laws and ordinances that have taken effect beginning July 1st of this year around minimum wage. And if there are any questions regarding what I'm going to be presenting tonight, or if you have any questions in general about our services and whatnot, please do connect with us. This is our intake line. It's 312-986-4105, or you can also email me at trafficking@metrofamily.org. We also have an ability for you to connect with us through a Google form that will be shared on the YouTube page as well. And it's a Google link that will take you to a private consultation data sheet where we will be collecting, just basic information so that we can get that information, know how to contact you, and then give you a call so we can talk about any questions you may have. Okay. So just really quickly, Legal Aid Society has been in operation since 1886, and we have worked to provide legal services to everyone regardless of the ability to pay. And so really focusing on providing justice for all is the mantra. So since 1886, we've been providing services around crime victimization, crime survivor issues, from human trafficking to domestic violence, and immigration issues related to that, and then wage issues, wage and employment matters. We provide these services in both Cook County and DuPage County. And like many service providers at the moment with COVID-19, we are working for the most part in a remote fashion. We do have skeletal crews in our sites, in our community centers, but just so you know, we are open during this time to provide free legal services on various matters. So again, give us a call. Check out our website as well so that you can find out more about what we do for the community. We are also part of a bigger agency, a social services agency called Metropolitan Family Services. And we do have a site our main site in Wheaton with additional locations around the DuPage County area, in Warrenville, Woodridge, Elmhurst. We provide a whole variety of services for the DuPage community, including those of you in Schaumburg. So, a variety that I can't really have all of them in mind right now, but it's surrounding the preservation of families, the building strength around economic stability, education, economic empowerment, and wellness, emotional wellness. We have early childhood centers. We have counseling services. Please do visit our website at metrofamily.org. You can also visit us, and this is our address, although again, with COVID-19, visiting is limited. So I would encourage you to do visit our website to learn more about our agency. So that's who we are. I'm going to go ahead and go into The minimum wage laws. So the Illinois minimum wage law has changed their minimum wage beginning July of this year. So beginning July through December of this year, we are now at $10 per hour. And I do have this distinction around the age because I'll go into a little more specifics in the next slide. So it's at $10 per hour with the goal of making it or achieving a $15 minimum wage rate by 2025. So what's going to happen is that beginning January of next year, we're going to go up in increments of $1 an hour. So meaning that January 1st of 2021, it's going to go up $11, 2022, and so on and so forth until we achieve $15 in 2025. So the Illinois minimum wage law does allow for sub-minimum wages only under certain circumstances. And for the most part, these are the only circumstances that allow for sub-minimum wages. So during the first 90 days of employment, an employer can pay 50 cents less than the minimum wage. So for now, it's $9.50. But once an employee or a worker is working their 91st day of employment, then they should be bumped up to $10. And then employers or establishments around the state can also apply for a license with the Illinois Department of Labor in order to provide a sub-minimum wage during the learning and training phase of employment for a specific role in their establishment or their company. They can also apply for a license to provide sub-minimum wages in order to hire individuals with learning and physical limitations. And then that distinction around age, it really comes under this next category where really when we're thinking about minors or anyone who's working and is under 18 years of age, they can be paid less than $10 per hour, specifically $8 for the hours worked between for the first hour through 650 hours working for that employer within a given calendar year. But the moment that that minor hits the 651st hour of working, then their pay needs to be bumped up to $10 as well. And then lastly, we have the distinction around tipped employees, and it really is about employer the employer being able to get tip credit. So what this means is that an employer can take credit for an employee's tips in an amount not to exceed 40% of the wages. So meaning that an employer can look at the $10 minimum wage rate requirement, and then 40% of that or $4 of that credited to tips that the a tipped employee is getting, so that from the employer is paying $6, and then the credit of $4 is coming from whatever tips that the tipped employee is getting. However, when there is a shortage in terms of tips, such that the employee ends up not getting $10 an hour, then the employer needs to make up that difference. I don't know if there are any questions so far, but I'm going to take a pause and see if there's any.
Okay. Are there any, are there any circumstance, all employers, regardless, have to follow this minimum wage rule? Is that correct?
That's correct. And it depends on, so we'll have later on some other slides that show there's a difference when the employer is located in Cook County or in Chicago. So they have their own minimum wage rates. But for the most part, for anyone who's located or is given a license by an entity outside of those counties, outside the city or the county of Cook, then they need to follow this, the state minimum wage requirement.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for the most part, any individual hired by an employer who employs at least 4 employees needs to follow the minimum wage rate. However, there is an exception. So for domestic workers, even if the domestic worker is employed by someone who does not have 4 employees, that domestic worker still needs to be paid $10 an hour. And when we talk about domestic worker, we talk that definition includes caregivers, nannies, workers who clean the home, cleaners, and whether they live in the home or don't live in the home. So, um, so back to your question, it does apply to any individual who employs at least 4 employees. So if it's a person who's got less than 4 employees, does not apply, except if we're talking about domestic worker. Now, really quickly, overtime. So I have a sentence here that anyone who works over 40 hours in any given work week must be paid 1.5 times the amount of pay. So that means that folks who work over 40 hours by the 41st hour, they should be paid $15 if we're looking at the state minimum wage right now. So for overtime pay, we do have some distinctions. We have some exceptions. So it doesn't apply to agricultural workers. It doesn't apply to independent contractors, not applicable to executive or professional employees, and salespeople in car dealerships. And there are a couple of other folks who are exempted from the overtime provision, but those for the most part are the most salient that I think would be relevant to what we're talking about. So again, if there are any questions, feel free to give us a call or connect with us. So that was the state minimum wage. The Cook County Minimum Wage Ordinance also took effect July 1st of 2020. And instead of $10, the Cook County Minimum Wage Ordinance talks about $13. So $13 an hour. And then for tipped workers, it's a base wage of, instead of $6 like in the state, it's $5.30 an hour. But it's the same principle behind that at the end of the day, the employer needs to make up for the difference if the tipped worker does not make enough in tips to meet the $13 per hour minimum wage. However, what makes Cook County different is that municipalities can opt out of this wage ordinance. So there are some municipalities in Cook County that have said, we are not going to let the minimum wage ordinance of Cook County apply to us. For those municipalities, it's going to be the state minimum wage that applies. Now, I think one question that arises with our COVID situation is that sometimes there are many of us who are asked to work from home some days of the week or some hours of the week. And to work from home, when originally we were working in sites or business establishments that are located outside of DuPage County. So that's why I want to, highlight the Cook County Minimum Wage Ordinance and later on the City of Chicago Wage Ordinance because of those possible situations. And I know that many folks in the Schaumburg area and then who reside in DuPage County do work outside of the county. So again, the Cook County Minimum Wage Ordinance, there are a couple of requirements in order for that to apply, aside from the fact that the municipality did not opt out of this wage ordinance. The employee or the worker should have worked for the employer in Cook County for at least 2 hours in any given 2-week period, which is easy enough to comply with, you could say. And then the same thing as with the Illinois minimum wage requirement. The employer has 4 or more employees. Again, not applicable if they're under 3, except when domestic worker. So domestic worker, regardless of how many employees employed, domestic workers should be given $13 an hour. So this applies when the business facility is in Cook County or the license is issued in Cook County or by Cook County, okay? So there's the Cook County minimum wage rate and then the city. Same thing as the county, same thing as Cook County, that 2 hour in any 2 week period requirement. And the employer is an employer in Chicago. How is that determined? Same way, business establishment located in Chicago or license issued by the city of Chicago. And aside from a minimum wage, the city has a paid sick leave ordinance. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but just to know that there is a paid sick leave, mandatory paid sick leave ordinance that comes along with this. So the minimum wage in Chicago is $14 for large employers, $13.50 for small employers, and then they follow the state minimum wage for youth workers. Youth workers meaning under 18. And then they do also have the same idea around tipped workers. So tip worker should has a base pay paid by the employer at $8.40 or $8.10 or $6, but as long as the tips are able to meet the minimum wage requirements of $14, $13.50 or $10, then the employer is good. But if not, then the employer needs to make up the difference. Okay. So all domestic workers, same thing as in the state and Cook County minimum wage requirements. All domestic workers should be paid the minimum wage rate regardless of how many employers, how many workers the employer employs. What will make the distinction is how many they're employed is in terms of how much the domestic worker is paid. So $13.50 is if the employer is employing between 0 to 20 employees, and then $14 if the employer is employing over 20 workers. So you can see here that the minimum wage and the overtime pay, the same idea as in the state minimum state overtime laws. Time and a half for hours worked beyond 40. So let's go to an overview. So a lot of numbers and a lot of facts that I threw out right there. This is just an overview of all of the minimum wage rates, okay? One thing that we want to think about is that Illinois minimum wage rate changes in January, whereas Cook County and the city of Chicago minimum wage rate changes in July. So for Illinois, it's going to go up $1 January 2021. For Cook County, they still have to determine how much this is going to be effective July 2021. And then the city of Chicago, it's also going to go up $1 to $15 by July of 2021, July 1st, 2021. So I just wanted to throw in a minimum wage example just so we can have some numbers going in our heads. And, I didn't trust that I could manually compute this in my head. So I've written down some of the numbers right here in case you see me looking up and down like this. But let's say, for example, there's a person named Daniel who works for a processing factory in DuPage County, and they make the minimum wage. They were hired July 1st of 2019. So in July of 2019 through December, our state minimum wage. So first of all, it's the state minimum wage that would apply because the fact that the establishment is located in DuPage County, we can assume that the state minimum wage would apply and that it wasn't incorporated in another county or in the city of Chicago. You might have circumstances where an establishment is issued a license and is physically located in different areas. And so that can bring up some questions. And again, it's all fact specific. So we would love to connect and answer those questions if we get those facts. It all depends on the facts. But let's say, for example, for our scenario, easy enough, license issued in DuPage County and working in DuPage County, business facility is located in DuPage County, okay? So it was $8.25 an hour, which went up to $9.25 an hour in January through June, and then went up to $10. So this is the state minimum wage laws, okay? Let's say it's a 40-hour work week that is mandated by this business facility or by this factory. So if we remember the sub-minimum wage example, sub-minimum wage is allowed in the first 90 days of someone's employment, right? So again, 50 cents less. So in Daniel's case, from July 1 to September 30th, he could have been paid $7.75 instead of $8.25, and that would have been okay. And so if he was paid $7.75 an hour for 40 hours worked or for a work week, he would have been making $310 an hour, 310. And then as soon as October 1st hit, he should have been making the minimum wage, which is $8.25. And so from October 1st through December 31st, he should have been making $330 a week for a 40-hour work week, or a difference of $20 between $7.75 and $8.25. And then by Jan 1st to June of 2020, this number should have gone up a $40 more per week compared to $8.25, or $370 compared to $330 at $8.25 an hour. And then beginning July, going up another 75 cents. From July to December 30th, instead of making $370 a week, he should now be making $400 a week, which will then go up to $440 a week beginning January 1st of 2021. So, just to show how 50 cents or 75 cents or $1 an hour can really amount to a lot of money by the end of the week. And so, with many compensation claims, this is something that we really want to think about and see and determine which minimum wage applies and how much it was as of the date that they were working. Because again, as you can see here, depending on the time, depending on the location, depending on what jurisdiction has oversees or has the power to issue minimum wage laws, it differs. Okay. Any questions so far?
I don't see any questions from our audience yet. Audience,
Okay.
please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go into an example of overtime. So let's say Daniel was working 40 hours a week, right? If he was asked to do overtime in January through June of this year, that means by the 41st hour that he was asked to work in any given work week, he should be getting $13.87 or 88, $13.88 per hour instead of $9.25. And then from July through December of this year, he should be making $15 by the 41st hour. And then next year, that goes up to $16.50 for any time worked over 40 hours. So remember a while ago, I did mention that overtime is 1.5 times the rate of pay. So this is 1.5 times the rate of pay. And there is another term that we tend to hear a lot, which is called straight overtime. Straight overtime means 100%, not 150%, 100% of your regular pay. And this applies when you have business establishments that consider a work week that is less than 40 hours. So let's say, for example, Daniel was working for a factory that instead of a 40-hour work week, the factory mandated a 38-hour work week. So like, for instance, some places, they do have 37.5-hour work weeks or 38-hour work weeks. So let's say Daniel's factory has a 38-hour work week. If in a given week he works 38 hours and then he's asked to work an additional 2 hours, those additional 2 hours will bump him up to 40 hours, but he will still be paid the straight overtime. So straight overtime meaning if he worked those hours between July and December 30th of this year, it would be $10 an hour. So straight overtime for the 39th and the 40th hour. But the moment he's made to work or is actually working the 41st hour, then it's no longer straight overtime, but it's overtime of time and a half or $15. So just really quickly wanted to make that distinction. If it's under 40 or straight up at 40, it's straight overtime. And then if it's over, then it's time and a half is what we call. So let's say last week, Daniel was asked to work last week, 40 hours. He should be paid $400 for that, right? Or $10 an hour. But he was asked to work an additional 10 hours. So 10 hours at $15 an hour or $150 for the week. So a total of $550 for 50 hours worked last week. Okay, if that helps kind of kind of eliminate the distinctions.
That straight time overtime, that's confusing one. I know our library has a 37.5 hour work week. So I completely understand what you're saying about that. So
same here. So, right. I mean, there are a couple of us, it's 37 and a half. Same here, it's 37 and a half. And it can kind of be a little...
It can be a little confusing. Yes,
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So there you go. So we'll come back to Daniel later on. But just to say that employers technically are mandated to keep records of workers, hours of work, recordings of the worker's name and how long they've worked, and so if you've got those timestamps or you have to clock in at work, that's part of it, because employers do need to have records of how much work their workers have worked in any given year. However, we strongly encourage that workers also keep track of their workday. So it's always best to have, a calendar of some sort where you note the start and end times that you've worked, the breaks that you've taken, when were you paid and how much were you paid. If there are any questions you have about your work day, just to really have a recording of that would be the best thing to do for yourself. And I think this is an example of the calendar that we provide for free to the community, where anyone can write down the days and times of work. And you can see it's a blank calendar so that anyone can write the date and the months that they want to be tracking, where you can write down the days and times of work, workplace issues, or any work-related matters. This is, as you can see, bilingual in Spanish and English, but it's an information calendar that is provided for free, and we do have these in the Schomburg Library. So anyone can stop by and get a copy,
yes.
Right?
Okay. Yes, definitely. We do have these. I'm holding one up now, what she's showing on the screen. So we do have a supply of these calendars. Whoever would like a copy of it or would like to have one, we will definitely make arrangements for them to pick it up at the library. Just send an email.
Yeah, and we're always happy to keep replenishing at the library as long as, folks are getting these calendars. And aside from these blank spaces where folks can be recording and keeping track of your time, there is a bunch of information, as has been shown, informational pages around public benefits, how to file taxes, how to get your driver's license in Illinois, a directory of services around the state, just a whole bunch of information and general labor issues, questions and answers for labor matters. So a whole bunch of information, both Spanish and English, that will hopefully be useful to all of you.
Oh, yes. It's a great resource. It's definitely a great resource for people to use.
Hey, Nika, I'm going to chime in for just a moment here if I can.
Sure.
I have a comment about the calendar, and then I have a question too.
Okay.
So for the calendars, I know that Claudia has a good supply of them in her office. I am going to suggest to those that are interested, well, because of COVID, we're not keeping anything on display to pick up. So if you do want a calendar for any reason, please get in touch with either Claudia or myself, and our email addresses are in the chat, and they're also on the YouTube recording. And let us know, and we'll make arrangements to have them put in a holds area for you. So if you come into the library looking for a calendar, they're not going to be out in a stack, but we will have them set aside, and based on request, then we can accommodate that and make sure that they can come in and pick them up. Yes. I have a question.
Sure.
With all those calculations that you did, and I really tried hard to keep up and to follow along, what if an employee realizes after viewing this, oh my gosh, I was not paid correctly, I was not paid appropriately, can I go back and file a claim? Am I going to risk my current position if I realize that 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I was not paid according to the law and I was taken advantage of either in error or deliberately by an employer? What are the steps that employee could take? And is there like a statute of limitations about how far they can go back?
Yeah, and so that's where it depends which statute applies, because it differs if it's the minimum wage law of Illinois or the city of Chicago or the federal minimum wage or the Cook County. So for instance, Cook County is 3 years. So it really depends. And so we will have to look into the specific situation to determine. But for the most part, we can go back at least a year. So there are some, we will have to look into the specifics, but I think we can definitely go back at least a year. And there might be other surrounding issues other than overtime and minimum wage that could be worth considering, so that are covered by other laws. So even if it feels like, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, so even if it feels like, oh, it's been a while back, I encourage anyone who might have that thought, feel free to reach out. It's always best to get those questions answered and just get some thought around it with someone's help. And so I would encourage anyone to, again, get in touch with us so that we can figure things out with you. But I'm going to go later on into some of the agencies, state and city agencies that can help out as well with some of these questions. But the first thing that I would ask folks is to definitely reach out. And understandably, many folks don't feel like they can speak up because of, possibly worried about compromising their position in the workplace. That's why we say, call someone that you think that can help you figure things out, like us. And there are the labor agencies who, for the most part, you can file a question or a complaint in a confidential or anonymous way. But I think it's best for people to help figure things out when they have an advocate with them. And an advocate meaning someone like us, or if not us, someone who does this kind of work. And I'd be happy to help connect folks with other folks who are doing this work and can help figure things out for you as well.
That's very encouraging, because we at the public library, and we work the public service desks, and if we're approached with that question by a patron, we want to make sure that while we are not able to answer their questions directly on this, that we are able to say it is worth exploring. Don't dismiss what's happened in the past as a loss, that they do need an advocate. And so working with organizations like yours for these programs kind of widens our sources available to suggest to them. So thank you for that answer.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes. And encouraging folks to really connect is, I think, the best way to help folks figure out what's going on. And even if it's something that's happened in the past, like you say, to seek remedy, no matter how long ago it's happened, I think is the best way to look at it. So
Good to hear.
It's empowering, I think, when you have somebody like you to help.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, part of the reason why we wanted to do this, and again, saying our thanks to Schomburg Library for hosting us, is because we want to emphasize that workers' rights are not suspended even with our COVID situation. It's really caused so much havoc, what we're all going through right now with COVID, but workers are still entitled to a safe and healthy workplace. And so we will have a follow-up conversation, another presentation on Monday around safety and health in the workplace. To be paid for the work, which, as I showed a while ago, cents here and there can really add up to a lot. And then to report any abuse, any safety, any wage or labor concerns. Your rights are not suspended. Our rights are not suspended. And whether we're talking of federal law, state law, Cook County or county law, and city law, all of those, or city ordinances, all of those jurisdictions have whistleblower protections, which means that when a worker reports a concern, the worker cannot be retaliated against or cannot be fired because of that report. So retaliation can come in many forms, but as long as someone is feeling like they're being threatened and their job security is being threatened because of what they decided to do, to report or to ask questions or to even reach out to someone like me with questions, that could be whistleblower protection issue. So examples of retaliation are reduced work hours, harassment in or outside the workplace, and intimidation. Harassment or intimidation experienced by the worker themselves or in their work environment or by family or friends of the worker that is related to that such harassment or such intimidation is related to because this worker reported or reached out with a question around their worker or the work situation. Okay. So some other examples of labor issues that may arise in a workplace that shows that there's a concern here and someone should definitely reach out. As we discussed, wages is a big one. Denying someone all or part of their wages or what they're justly owed. The violation of labor laws, such as the minimum wage or workplace safety requirements, the confiscation of worker documents, and sometimes it's not even confiscation. We've heard situations where the excuse was for safekeeping. The worker is asked to give their documents to an employer or a manager or something of the sort. These can be all kinds of documents, whether identification documents, passport, financial documents, any personal documents that the worker should actually be in possession of. And then threats of harming the worker or their family. So we've had, there can be cases where it's the worker themselves that's being harassed or being threatened. It's their co-workers. It's maybe even strangers, like maybe the customers in the workplace or the family of the worker or friends of the worker. So any kind of threats or intimidation, creating an intimidating atmosphere, could be a sign that there's a concern here in the workplace. And then forcing to work long hours with little rest. Our state has mandatory break laws that require at least a 20-minute minimum break by the fifth hour of a workday when someone is working 7.5 hours. And we also have Rest Day Act. It's called the seventh rest day and 7 work days. So by the 7th work day, there should be a mandatory rest day. So things like that that ensure that there is some breaks allowed or afforded the worker. And then lies and false promises about the working conditions. And this can be whether at the point of recruitment. So someone is told, oh, this is what you'll be doing, this is how much you'll be making, and then they come to the workplace and it's not that the case, or now they owe a debt, or now they're asked to do something else aside from what they were originally recruited for, then there's something amiss there. It can be at the point, the lies or false promises could be at the point of recruitment or even during the working situation. So sometimes folks are told, I know I owe you this much, but this is all I can afford to pay you for now, and I promise to make up the difference by next month. And I've heard from some folks by it's already the seventh month and they haven't been paid, or they've been paid very minimally, and the quote unquote what the employer owes has just been increasing exponentially and hasn't been coming down. So again, these are all some examples, not exhaustive. There might be just questions around fairness or questions around the job situation. Feel free to reach out again, to us or to folks like these. So any help for labor issues, we do have the Illinois Attorney General's office. They have a specific bureau dedicated to workplace rights, and they have a page in their website dedicated to that as well. You can check them out at illinoisattorneygeneral.gov, and this is their phone number. They can take anonymous calls, or they can also take confidential calls. And it's a situation where, their stuff is bilingual, so people who speak Spanish or English can call, or even other languages. And this is for any questions or concerns around rights that are given by or because of state laws. So again, the state minimum wage or rest days or even executive orders issued by the governor in response to COVID, it's the Illinois Attorney General's office that would hear those complaints. For anyone who is seeking remedy under City of Chicago ordinances, so the minimum wage, paid sick leave, or anything else under the City of Chicago, it's the Office of Labor Standards that would have jurisdiction over those. So you can get a hold of them through calling 311 or visiting their website as well. And they also have, just like the Illinois Attorney General's office, there is a way to connect with them by filing an online form.
Mm-hmm.
The Cook County Commission on Human Rights also has their own system for anything related to the violation of the Cook County ordinance, minimum wage ordinance. And then they also do mention around the retaliation piece that I talked about a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
So underpayment or otherwise violated the ordinance, they do have 3 years that they mention here. And you can email them, you can call them, or check out their website as well. And then the Illinois Department of Labor, which is the agency that works on minimum wage and overtime claims for the minimum wage rates that are covered by the state. So if we're talking about DuPage County, this would be it. They have an online system where anyone can start that complaint online, so that if we're thinking about not having a stale claim, this is how we can start it, to say that, yeah, I started the complaint online. But again, call us, email us, ask any questions, or you can also approach Schaumburg Library, and the librarians will have the information to connect you as community connectors to folks like us. Feel free to,
Yes.
reach out in any way that feels most comfortable to you,
Yes.
or to anyone who you think would need this information. And then
Right.
I also, again, have that Google form that will be shared with you all through the YouTube page and through this webinar, through this presentation,
Right.
if that's another way you prefer to do it.
Oh, yes, definitely. Wow,
Yes.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, let's see. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, this is wonderful. Like, just knowing that there are agencies that someone can call, for to ask questions. And sometimes you just have maybe something that's bothering you and you don't know if it's a problem, and maybe it just doesn't hurt to ask,
Exactly.
to find out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I
So,
think that's what we really want to emphasize, that it doesn't hurt to ask, and we encourage folks to ask, really.
yes,
Yeah.
excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, I just seeing if there are any questions. Patty?
No
Thank you.
questions on
Mhm.
YouTube, and I'm not fielding any more from our Q&A. So I
Right.
think that's an indication to us that you've really covered the gamut.
I hope so.
Yes.
Yes.
And if for
All
any
right.
reason we do receive any questions between now and your return with you and your colleague next week, we will just hold on to those questions for you and save them for that time.
Oh, I think that
Yes.
sounds like a plan. Yes,
Because we have
definitely.
two more programs coming up. One is on the
Yes.
16th and one is on the 19th. I've put both of those dates
Excellent.
and titles and descriptions.
Excellent. Yes, I was just gonna say that, but it's already in the chat. So next Monday, the topic will be health and safety at the workplace during COVID. That's on Monday, the 16th at 6:30, and Thursday's program, labor trafficking and exploitation. So again. Mika, thank you again. That was wonderful. I learned a lot. Patty is the business liaison librarian, so she's right on that. But I learned something too, and it's good to know that I can refer any questions that come my way to your organization.
Yes,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. This is well beyond the scope of my grounds of familiarity. So thank you. I learned a lot and took a lot of great notes too. And
Yes.
we're really glad that you partnered with us for this 3-program series this month.
Yes.
Myself as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And we will see you each other next
Yes.
week.
Next
All right.
week. All
So
right.
stay safe, be well.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank
Thanks.
you,
Good
and
night,
good
Claudia.
night, everybody. Yes.